This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 176 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today I am chatting with three people who have those kind of jobs where I think a lot of people will hear and think, wow, that's an amazing job. I'm so jealous. I want to do your job, that kind of thing. So our topic is when traveling is your job. And I have had, limited experience of this myself, I have to say. I, sometimes am lucky enough to travel for work and do some pretty spectacular things. It doesn't happen too often, but now and again it does. And every time it does, of course, there will be plenty of my friends saying, oh, you're so lucky. I wish that was my job, and things like that. And I'm sure that all of my guests will agree with me in saying that we realize that we are in some senses lucky, or certainly we realize what a privilege it is to be able to do work that is immensely fun and rewarding. Having said that, it's also important to remember that these people actually work really hard to get to that work in the first place, and they still work hard when they're working. So that's kind of some of what you'll hear in today's show. But of course, there's still lots of really cool things about working in a kind of position where you get to travel and do cool stuff. So basically, that's a really long preamble to say. Today, I'm going to talk to three people who travel a lot, and we're going to talk about what it's like when you travel so much. So my first guest today is Anna Chittenden, who writes Lost Guides, a really beautiful series of guidebooks. I've just got the Tokyo one, and Tokyo and Beyond, and it's beautiful. Like, it's not just, it's not a kind of a Lonely Planet style informative, every little detail in their guidebook. It's a selection of really cool places with lots of beautiful photos. So that's the kind of work that Anna does. And we chatted about what it's like when your job is traveling around to make guidebooks.
I think that when your work is travel, there's always just like a blurry line between, like, okay, if you're on holiday, you're like, okay, well, should I be doing a bit of work? Or if you're, I don't know, anyway, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that traveling for work is like so different from traveling for leisure. Mm-hmm. But say if you were just like posting a few photos on your Instagram, people were like, oh, are you on holiday? Or like, say if I was, working on my like Tokyo book, and I'd be like, oh yeah, you're in Tokyo. Oh, that must be lovely. And you're like, yeah, it is lovely, but I've also got like work to do. And the work is that, I have to follow a strict itinerary, and I have to do all these things today, and then I have to do all these things tomorrow. And, I'm only here for, I don't know, 2 weeks this time. And then a few months later, another like month or whatever. So it's kind of like the kind of opposite of going on holiday in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's, when you're on holiday, you're like, oh, this is like, it's leisure, it's downtime, it's relaxing. It's not having a to-do list, and it's not having, work to do. Mm-hmm. And so when you're traveling for work, it just takes on this, like, it just feels so different. But then it's weird because you're like, yeah, I am in this new destination, or I am in this destination, and it is wonderful. But I'm also having to, in my case, write down lots of notes, make sure that I've got all the information that I need, take photos, because I take all the photos for my books as well.
Right, yeah.
So it's not that it's stressful, because obviously once when you've been doing something for a few years, it just becomes normal. But it's just completely different. And then you do get that thing where I don't think many people, unless they do it as well, really understand. They just think you're going on a jolly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to ask. How do you deal with all the people? I mean, I see it all the time, especially on the other full-time travelers I know, and people will comment on their Instagram something like, oh, what a lovely place for a holiday or something. And they're like, and they'll answer, yes, it would be great if I was on holiday, but I'm
Yeah,
working.
exactly. Like there's this girl I know in Singapore, and I think does marketing for a resort in the Maldives.
Right.
And obviously everyone's like, oh my God, like the Maldives. And she's like, yeah, but I'm never sitting on a sun lounger. Like, do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, but the thing is that obviously the reason why you do it is because you love it. But then it just becomes, it's just different. But then, yeah, a working holiday to other people just looks like a normal holiday.
Yes, it's hard to differentiate from home. Can you talk me through what a typical day would be if you're doing research for one of your books? What, how long is your day? What are you doing? What's it all about?
Say if I was doing my Tokyo book, so like for a few, like probably like a few weeks or month, even months before, I'm thinking, okay, these are the things that I need to do. It might be that there are certain things that need to be like on certain days. So say, for example, it's going to see like the sumo wrestling. I need to be like, okay, which day is sumo wrestling? Which day can I go? Da, 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 da. Mm-hmm. So you're just creating this really detailed itinerary of like literally hour by hour, like where you're going. And it might be like having to check like opening hours and which days things are open and what time things are open, and to make the best use of your time. Like,
I was just going to say, it's not like when I try and do slow travel, I imagine you have to fit in as much as possible to be able to make it effective.
Exactly. And then also just thinking about your clustering things by obviously like areas. Mm-hmm. So say if you're like, okay, I need to go, and say if it is like, going to the sumo wrestling area, okay, what else can I do like while I'm there? What museums should I be like going to see? Like what restaurants should I be popping into? So it's like you're just creating this like really sort of intense itinerary where like every half hour is literally accounted for.
Oh gosh.
Because also you don't want to miss anything. You don't want to be like, oh well, you want to for the research for my books, I want to see as much as possible, because obviously I don't include everything that I see, but I want to make sure that I've seen everything. Because if I see something great, then I want to be able to include it. But at the same time, I might go somewhere and I don't think it's good enough. But obviously, that's something that you have to take on. That's something that you have to take on too. That you might waste your time. Well, it's not waste of time; it's just research. So it is sort of intense, but at the same time, I do really love it. And at the end of the day, if I'm like, oh, I've got six, that's quite a lot, but 3 or 4 amazing places that I'm going to add to my book, and that I get sort of like really happy that I'd actually much prefer to have this like really intense itinerary, and then you can kind of just feel like you've just got a lot done.
You've done a really good day's work, and it's contributed to the project.
Exactly. And there's absolutely like no sort of like leisure involved.
I have to say, I don't think I would be a very good guidebook writer. I don't think I'm quite the person to travel that hard, like that full on, and to still have a good eye for detail. I think I get distracted. So I think I have not missed my calling. I'm not meant to be a guidebook writer. But Anna does a great job of it, even though it does sound like quite often it can be hard work, fun work, but hard work. Now, my next guest is someone else who does a lot of travelling, and it's fun work but hard work. It's Christine Retschlag, who I've known for some time. She's a fellow member of the Australian Society of Travel Writers, so I've known her for a few years and been following her as she continually leaves home and heads off for another trip, like many of the travel writers I know. And so we chatted at the end of last year, it was, about what it's like to be someone who is travelling more than they are at home, considerably more, quite often.
Oh, yeah. Look, it's a very good question, because I've just finished all my travel for the year. Mm-hmm. And I probably am in a different frame of mind than I am in, say, January when I begin. In recent years, I have travelled more and more and more. In an ideal world, I would travel for a week a month. I would be home writing for a week a month, and the other 2 weeks I'd be researching and I guess doing other writing that's not related to travel.
Mm-hmm.
But this year I have just been non-stop on the go. I've actually got my big wall planner, and now it's the end of the year. It looks like a bit of a car crash has happened on my there's squiggly lines everywhere. Equally, when I start the year with my wall planner and it's empty, I panic because there's nothing on it. And I think, oh, no, I'm not going to go anywhere. This is dreadful.
There must be some time where there's equilibrium in the middle of the year where you're satisfied. But
I kind of think probably around September, October, where you think I'm nearly there. Right. I've nearly done it all. Looking at this calendar, I was probably on the road every week or every second week.
Really?
For about 10 months.
Wow.
Some of those were very quick turnarounds. I'm looking at July, and I did Bali, Mauritius and Croatia that month. And
they're not near each other.
No, and look, in an ideal world, there were 3 very separate trips organised by 3 very separate people, and what had happened was one had been cancelled and one had been brought forward. So in July, my world just collided into all this travel. And in an ideal world, I could have gone Bali and then over to Perth on my way to Mauritius, then on my way to Croatia, and kept going, which would have made perfect sense. But that didn't happen. So I went up to Bali, back to Brisbane, then Brisbane, Perth, and Perth, Mauritius, Mauritius back to Brisbane, and then Brisbane over to Croatia. So I was in that month, I was just crisscrossing the globe, to the point I no longer knew what country I was in when I woke up, which is a common affliction of travel writers. You often you seriously do. You wake up in some strange bed and you go, where the hell am I?
Oh, my goodness.
and that sounds all very romantic, but it's actually quite terrifying.
Yeah.
So that was a really busy month. Look, yeah, I'd like to actually slow it down a bit, because I think you can go a little bit insane, and you're riding on planes at 2 a.m. because you have to get onto your next destination. And also you need a life back in Brisbane. So I guess when we're talking about pros and cons, pros, it's an amazing life. If you asked me the one thing I wanted most in the world, it's freedom and to lead a really interesting life.
Right. Yeah.
And they are huge benefits of what I do. But the cons are pretty big too. In June, just before all this major travel happened, actually, I had come back from quite a bit of travel again in May. I had been in Fiji, I'd been in Carnarvon Gorge in outback Queensland, and I'd been in the Whitsundays. And while most of those are quite close, they still, are week-long trips that require a lot of work. And so that's 3 weeks out of that 4 in May.
Wow.
And June I came home, and we were having a rare couple of really big wintry days in Brisbane where the westerlies blow, and a little bit like where you are in Perth, our homes aren't built for the cold, and it was just miserable. And I just fell into a heap, and I spent 2 days just crying my eyes out.
Aww.
And I was really stuck going, I'm just so tired. And it's only June and I've got 6 months more of travel to do. How am I going to do this? And I was just jet lagged and just full of deadline pressure and not loving 2 days of winter in Brisbane.
Yeah.
And the way I got out of that was I wrote a blog on loneliness. And what fascinates me most about this is, out of all of the travel blogs I've written in the last 7 years, this one was the one that resonated most with anyone, anywhere in the world.
Interesting.
So while people think our life as a travel writer is glamorous, they really understood what it was like to be lonely.
Right.
And then I had this post went viral. I had the World Kindness Movement from overseas sharing it. I had other travellers, young backpackers in the Netherlands, finding me online and emailing me saying, I've read your blog, I've just been back from a year travelling in Australia, and no one back home understands what I've been through or wants to hear what I've been through.
Oh, yes. That's so common.
Isn't it? And so in a way, we go through this every time we leave and come home.
Yes, gosh, exactly. So I've been through that from when I lived abroad and came home, and that was awful. But that past and I don't travel anywhere near as much as you. So I don't really experience that. But to have that regularly, that's really hard to deal with, actually.
Yeah, look, and, don't, get me the world's smallest fiddle. It's not the biggest problem in the world, but it is a reality. And when people think it's very glamorous, it can be. It can be amazing. It can be a rock star lifestyle 1 minute, but the next minute you're home and you've got all the issues that have been kind of put on hold that you have to deal with when you walk through the door. And yeah, that sense of just slotting back. One of our fellow travel writers calls it re-entry. Almost like we've come back from another planet, and how do you adjust to that? And I guess the other problem is how do you juggle your personal life with that? How do you miss a lot of birthdays? You miss a lot of things. I work really, really hard when I'm home on my friendships to rebuild them and to keep them alive. And even when I'm away, I'll say to my friends, you can get me any time of the day or night. I don't let them lapse because they're too important to me.
So I think Christine has given us a pretty balanced perspective there, because she recognises that, some aspects of her travelling life are really amazing and really interesting, but there are some significant downsides, and she's obviously working hard to mitigate those. So it's worth pondering, especially if you are thinking, oh, I wish I had a life where I could do, travel all the time. Maybe you don't actually wish it. It might not be exactly all you think it might be. Anyway, my final guest today is Kiki Wong, and she also has been through phases where she travels a lot, but in a little bit of a different situation. She's been a member of a band called Nylon Pink, and now she mostly does travel writing, under the same name of Nylon Pink. But for some years, she was touring around with Nylon Pink. It was an all-Asian girls pop rock band from the States, based in the States, but traveling through the US, traveling through Asia. And I asked her what it was like to do that kind of travel.
A lot of the times while we were in a band, we played in a band called Nylon Pink, which is now currently our travel blog, but it was like an all-Asian girl pop rock band. So there was 5 of us, Asian girls,
awesome.
and very pink and Hello Kitty-esque, and we just played rock and roll, which is
gorgeous,
a crazy, crazy thing. But what happened was, we really gained most of our notoriety on social media. So as social media goes, even in this current state, it's always putting your best images, your best vision of who you are, and there's never the downsides of it. So we made it seem like we were really, really living up the high life, but touring with that band was pretty difficult. We had a van that was a 7-seater van with a trailer attached to the back, and we had 9 people in the van. So we had basically my singer Kyla was on the floor right where the passengers would sit and then put their legs down. She would sit right on the floor of that.
Oh, gosh.
Me, the keyboard player, and the drummer laid like hot dogs in the trunk.
Oh, no way.
We had the tour manager who was driving, and then whoever was navigating, which was probably our roadie, and then we had a sound guy. So, and then our bass player, they all had chairs, but all of us were on the floors.
Oh my
and
gosh.
It was pretty gnarly. We were traveling, at one point there was a tour that we went on that our van broke, and it took us 52 hours to get to the show that we were trying to get, because the tire blew out the entire coolant system. So the engine kept overheating, and it took us twice as long. Hadn't slept for 52 hours, and it was devastating. And we had to show up and play a show, thinking that like as if we had showered and looked beautiful and we were amazing and perform.
and the energy you need to perform as a musician.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. So we had done tours like that, and another thing is that a lot of the times, we've traveled to all these amazing places on tour. The problem with it is that you don't have a lot of downtime. You don't get to see a lot of those places. So it's a little bit sad, and the schedule would essentially be like, if you're doing a van tour or you're driving in, you would basically drive up, you would maybe sleep a little bit in the van, rest a little, play the show, pack up the gear. Bar closes at 2 a.m., get in the car and drive as far as you can to the next destination.
Oh, that night, really?
Yeah, that night, depending on if we had a show the next day.
Yeah.
So it was like you get maybe like 2 or 3 hours in the city. So there wasn't a lot of experiences that we got to have. I've been to almost all 50 states, like 48 states, but I haven't really got to see most of them, which is a little bit sad. So, it's tough, but I think now as we start doing, we're sober and we're travel writing as well, we get to experience those places again. So I kind of almost don't count them as I've experienced it, because I want to relive them and get to know the culture, get to know the feel, the vibe, when you stay somewhere and you experience a little longer. So
for sure. Yeah. Wow. That does sound tough in a van tour. What about when you were touring in Asia? How was that different?
It's funny so we did those van tours and they were brutal. And then we had that opportunity to play with the Hard Rock Cafes. So they offered us a tour in Macau, and also in Malaysia. So they had us in basically our own apartments. We played pretty rough. They were pretty long. We played about 4 hours each night.
Oh, wow.
Which was kind of insane.
That is long.
But it was pretty long, but we had our own accommodations. And the best place was in Malaysia because they flew us out. And I remember seeing in the in-flight magazine, we're just flipping through it, and there was a huge 2-page spread of us in there.
Awesome.
And nobody told us. It was the weirdest feeling ever. And we were just flipping through, just la-di-do, oh my goodness.
There we are.
So bizarre. And that was a really incredible experience. And they actually put us all in our own suites. So each of us got our own suite.
Oh, wow.
We
lovely.
had unlimited room service, unlimited drinks when you're downstairs, because I think they knew too much. But I was ordering drinks up to my room all the time. But it was completely contrasting what we had done, the year prior in the van, asking for pizzas and hoping people will feed us after we play, because we didn't have any money.
Oh, what a contrast. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. But probably well deserved and a good way to something that's well deserved after a lot of hard work. I think all musicians work really hard. Yeah, there's definitely pinnacle moments for sure. It makes it worth it, even if it's, just 1 or 2 moments like that. You get the feeling of all of it was worth it, even just for that 1 minute. I have to admit, I was a bit flabbergasted to hear just how hard life on the road can be for a traveling musician when Kiki explained their van tour, where they would start, leave at 2 or 3 a.m. from a place after they've performed, and then just drive through the night to get to the new place, perform, and so on. Kind of knew that it was, tough sometimes, but I didn't really think it was, I was surprised at just how tough it is. I would not cope very well with that, I don't think. So I'm glad that she also got to have some more luxurious experiences. Certainly a really interesting way to see the world, even if you don't necessarily get to see, as much of it as you would like to. So those are my 3 interesting guests for episode 176 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. It was very interesting for me to, contemplate this kind of, semi-full-time travel lifestyle. What are the pros? What are the cons? Is it as amazing and glamorous as we think? Of course it's not, but, there's lots of good sides and quite a few downsides as well. So, interesting to me. If you've ever had the privilege of traveling, a lot as part of your job, doing something fun like this, I would love to hear about it too, because I don't know. It's fascinating to me. I'd probably like to make another episode about this one day. So do let me know. Now, a very big thank you to the 3 fabulous guests today. I started off chatting with Anna Chittenden of The Lost Guides, and you can find her at thelostguides.com. And I'll leave a link in the show notes to her Tokyo book, which has just come out because it's beautiful. Next, I chatted with Christine Retschlag, and you can find her at her awesome blog, which is theglobalgoddess.com. And finally, I chatted with Kiki Wong, and you can find her at her website, which now focuses on travel, and it's at nylonpink.tv. Of course, come along to the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group and have a chat with us. Don't forget, if you are in the Thoughtful Travellers group or want to be, we are running now the Thoughtful Travellers book club. Our book for February that we're reading at the moment is The Year of Living Danishly by Helen Russell. It's a very interesting book about her experiences moving to Denmark. And come and join us and have a chat about it. For all of this info and anything else you need for this episode, you can find it at notaballerina.com/176. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.